All right, welcome back. As promised, I'm joined now by one of my favorite Twitter follows, Mark Schoefield, who is, like me, a former lawyer. Now, he says that he's a reform lawyer. I say that I'm a recovering lawyer. I'm not sure that there's any difference there, but I'm excited to have him on the show today. Inside the Pylon, if you haven't checked it out, it is an absolutely fantastic website. I've been poking around on it all morning long in preparation for this interview. So I'm excited to talk to him about that, and we're going to talk some Senior Bowl and Chiefs versus Pats and maybe some A.J. McCarron discussion. So, Mark, thanks again for joining me.
Oh, thanks for having me on. Really been looking forward to this. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, me too. Now, did I pronounce your name correctly?
It's Schoefield. It's a hard C, but I get that all the time, so it's no big deal.
Schoefield. Okay, I'll have to remember that. And so bad about names. Tell everybody, I do really love the website, by the way. Tell everybody about it. How did it come about, and what you guys do there?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting story. I mean, the guys that I started this with, we've been having, football debates, breaking down plays, stuff like that for years now on a baseball website of all things, the Sons of Sam Horn.net message board. It's a Red Sox message board, so we're all primarily Red Sox fans.
Okay.
And about 2 summers ago, it was the summer before last football season, we had the idea, hey, why don't we try doing it on our own, starting our own football site and taking what we've been doing and moving it over. So we launched basically the Monday after the Week 1 games, the last NFL season. And kind of what we do is we do a lot of film breakdowns, a lot of X's and O's stuff, a lot of draft coverage. We've got Chuck Zada, who was a kicker in college at Dartmouth. He does a lot of special team stuff for us, which is really cool.
Yeah.
Breaking down kicks, breaking down punt returns and stuff like that. Not a lot of people do that. And another thing we've done lately is our glossary, which we're doing in conjunction with the Scouting Academy, which is run by Dan Hatman. That's a program where people can learn how to scout players, if they want to be coaches, if they want to be scouts, if they just want to know more about football. So what we kind of do there is we take a term like cover 2, post route, whatever, and get some video together so people can learn more about the game.
I think that's one of the everything about it's good, but I think that's one of the better resources there. I did jump on the terminology part of it and poke around there, and we're going to talk about some of the terminology that you utilize in some of the articles that you've written. I wanted to touch upon the special teams part of it. It's really an underrated aspect of the game, in my opinion, and I think that you saw how important it is in this year's NFL playoffs.
Yeah, it's a huge part of the game. I mean, it's basically a third of each game is special teams plays, and games can be won or lost on a kick, on an extra point, on a punt return, and Chuck does a great job sort of showing readers, showing viewers of the website what can go wrong, what some good plays are. It's a really big part of the game, and not a lot of websites cover it. And I learned stuff all the time. I mean, I did a podcast with Chuck just the other night. He was breaking down kick coverage, safeties, and I learned more in that 10 minutes about special teams coverage than I ever learned playing the game for 13 years or so.
I was just getting ready to ask you. I thought that you had played the game. What position did you play?
I was a quarterback. I started playing football when I was 9.
Okay.
My first year in Pop Warner, I was a running back, and then I got moved to quarterback. Played that all through high school, and then 3 out of my 4 years in college, I played quarterback. My sophomore year, I got moved to play wide receiver / quarterback. I played a little bit of both, but most of my life I was a QB. That's why I spent so much time writing about it.
Right. And that's what we're going to talk about here in a minute. I really enjoyed your looks at some of the quarterbacks in the upcoming draft, some of the guys that are going to be at the Senior Bowl. You played at Northwestern, as I recall. Am I right?
No, I played at Wesleyan University.
Okay.
Division III school, so it wasn't exactly big-time college football, but it still counts.
I knew it was a Western something. Let's go ahead. Yeah, let's go ahead and get into it. I enjoyed your look at the Chiefs Patriots game. I expected the Kansas City Chiefs defense to play a lot better. They really missed Justin Houston, in my opinion, in that game. He didn't play very much, but it was a great article. What was in your opinion, the key to the Patriots' success there?
I think a huge part of it was getting Julian Edelman back. He allows that offense to run at a much faster pace, specifically from snap to release of the football. You put a stopwatch on Brady in that game. Most of his passes were getting out in just around 2 seconds, which is very, very fast. The article that I wrote, I looked at just one play, but the ball comes out so fast, but it's an 11-yard gain. And that just allows, the Patriots to neutralize, for example, Kansas City, that front of their defense so fast. They're great at getting after the quarterback. Like you said, Houston didn't play a lot, but they still have Tom Bahali, who's a incredible pass rusher. Dee Ford, who was drafted to rush the passer. But when you can't get to the quarterback, or you have to get to him in less than 2 seconds, it's really tough for a defense. And, Edelman runs those quick routes, lets Brady get the ball out of his hands quickly. That just played a big role.
Yeah. I thought it was brilliant that you picked that play because it's sort of like a microcosm of the Patriots offense when they're clicking on all cylinders. And you picked a play where they utilize the trips formation, and we're going to let you explain that to our listeners. And also, I want you to discuss, because it's something that comes up a lot, what rub routes and other ways that the Patriots use to create separation with their wide receivers.
Oh, sure. I mean, the play in question, they actually went with an empty backfield, so Brady's alone, doesn't have a running back next to him. They did have a running back, James White, in the formation on the field, but he was in that trips, which is a 3-receiver set to one side, with Gronkowski on the inside, sort of right next to the right tackle, and then Edelman in the middle. And Edelman runs a slant route. A lot of the Patriots' routes, they're quick routes, they're slants. They like to run what's called a whip or a pivot route, where, if you remember the Super Bowl on that last touchdown that Edelman scored, it looks like he's going to run a slant and then breaks back to the outside. Sometimes those are option routes where the receiver and the quarterback, they have a couple of ideas what the route will be, but it all depends on the coverage. And again, it's part of their offensive scheme and their design where they try to get the ball out quickly. New England, they throw the ball a lot, but they don't do a lot throwing it deep. They're not a vertical passing team. A lot of what they do is Edelman underneath, Amendola underneath, Gronkowski underneath. And they'll take deep shots. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised to see them throw the ball deep a couple of times against Denver, but they like to throw these short and intermediate routes.
You mentioned this, and it was actually something that I was going to ask you. I had on my notes to ask you. One of the hallmarks, and I think one of the success stories for the Patriots, not just their offense, but their team in general, but particularly their offense, is making use of misdirection. And Brady really is a master of using his eyes to confuse the defense. Do you agree with that?
Oh, I would definitely agree with that. That's a really great point. And what he can do with his eyes is take a defense that's designed to take away what their Patriots are trying to do and get defenders out of position. And again, coming back to that article I wrote, Kansas City was in cover one, meaning they have most of the defenders playing man coverage with a single high safety, sort of playing free, able to sort of read, but he's trying to help to be inside. And also in cover one, the underneath linebacker, Derek Johnson, he's in that sort of underneath hole, and he's supposed to help out on slant routes. But Brady was still able to find Edelman on a slant route, and the reason being, Brady takes a snap and looks away from Edelman, looks to the other side of the field at Danny Amendola. The linebacker sees this, thinks that Brady's going to throw to Amendola, and he breaks out of position, leaves his zone, and opens up this huge window. And, of course, Brady's not going to throw to his left. He's throwing to his right. And it's a very great point, Charlotte, you brought up. The ability of a quarterback for any team to manipulate defenders with his eyes, it's a very good trait to have. And, we'll get to the Senior Bowl quarterbacks in a bit, but that's something that I like about Dak Prescott, for example.
Yeah.
Something that he does.
I'm a big fan.
Yeah, I am too.
Yeah. Well, thanks. I appreciate the kind words. Another article that you wrote that I really enjoyed, and then we'll turn to, I do want to ask you real quick about A.J. McCarron, and we'll turn to the Senior Bowl, Dak Prescott, and some of the quarterbacks. Packers, Cardinals, what is special about the Cardinals' defense and their offense, in your opinion?
Looking at their defense first, Todd Bowles, who's now the coach of the New York Jets, he instilled a very fast attacking defensive scheme. They like to blitz a lot. And one of the things, I wrote an article about what the Packers might try to do and might be aware of before that game. And they showed Aaron Rodgers a sort of fire zone blitz where they, blitz a nickel back, but they drop a defensive lineman. They rotate coverage towards the hot read. So when Rodgers sees the blitz, he's looking right at the receiver, Devontae Adams, thinking he's going to throw a hot read there, but they rotate 3 defenders right to that receiver to sort of confuse him. Rodgers sees that, doesn't throw the ball, and then the play gets completely off structure. And when you think about that game that they had the other night, on that Hail Mary, most teams drop 8 guys back, rush maybe 1 or 2 guys after the pass. They blitzed Rodgers on that.
They did.
Sure, Rodgers made an incredible play the likes we'll never probably see again for the touchdown, but they still blitzed him. They didn't get away from their philosophy. And it's going to be really interesting to see, Cam Newton, extremely athletic quarterback. You blitz him a lot. You might, make yourself sort of susceptible to him breaking the pocket with his feet.
I agree completely. I was just getting ready to say it'll be interesting to see if they utilize a spy or if they just, trust in their ability to, to get to him and contain him, with their, with their front.
Yeah, I mean, that's going to be a really fun game to watch. I mean,
it is.
Both these games this weekend, I think if you love football, if you like just watching good football games, these 2 games really should deliver.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about Aaron Rodgers' season. It was, certainly they missed Jordy. You don't lose a player of Jordy Nelson's caliber and not suffer. But Aaron Rodgers has some issues of his own. What do you think was going on there?
Well, I think it's kind of a number of issues. Early in the season, they were able to move the football in the passing game. They weren't missing Jordy Nelson that much. Rodgers was able to get the ball out quickly. But then injuries started to mount, especially on the offensive line. You start getting pressure on the quarterback. So throws become less accurate. Every quarterback will, you'll still get the ball out. You'll still get it in the direction of the receiver, but sometimes the throw's not exactly where it should be. Then you have a couple more injuries with the wide receivers. Some guys missed some time, so guys weren't getting enough separation. This is a lot due to both injuries and some of the route schemes, frankly, weren't designed to get guys separation. So when you piece all of that together, guys aren't getting separation. The ball is slightly thrown off or isn't placed exactly where it needs to be. So, if the pass is a little bit off target, if you've got separation as a defender, you can still make the catch. But if the guy's draped on your back, that's a lot tougher. So I think what happened to Green Bay was sort of all of these issues kind of snowballed into just a scenario where they were just having trouble in football. They got on track a little bit in that wild card win over Washington, but they were able to take advantage of the secondary in Washington that was depleted by injuries. They were playing a lot of, 7-man coverages. They weren't rushing Rodgers a lot. They didn't blitz a lot. So he had time. But then, it kind of fell a little bit they had a little bit more struggles against Arizona.
Yeah. And much has been made about Eddie Lacy, his weight, his conditioning. And indeed, I think Mike McCarthy came out and said that he simply can't play at the weight that he is. What do you think about all of that?
I mean, he certainly wasn't the Eddie Lacy we've seen in the years past. I mean, when he came into the league, there was at least that one photograph of him at practice where he looked pretty big. And I think somebody actually on Twitter took the time to go through some of his old tweets and found all the times he had tweeted about food, which was an interesting way to spend your time. But, you've got to be, especially in this NFL where a team like Green Bay, they're throwing the ball a lot. You've got to run pass routes. You've got to be, they run a lot of zone runs where you've got to have some quickness to it. There's definitely a reason for him being able to play at a much smaller size, and it's now up to him to sort of listen to his coach and get down to the weight he needs to be.
Yeah, I think that it's a legitimate issue with his conditioning, and I'm reminded, I believe this was a play against the Cardinals, but there was a play later on in the season where Eddie Lacy was able to break free. It might have actually even been a screen pass. I'm not sure. And there he is running down the field, and he is chugging, and a defender was able to catch up with him, simply because you could tell he was running out of steam.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's a very legitimate issue. And, simple point is football is a very tough game. It's hard to score touchdowns. It's hard to get first downs sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're missing opportunities because you can get tracked down from behind, we're seeing it right now with the Shrine game. We're seeing it right now with the Senior Bowl next week. There are lots of guys out there that would love to be on an NFL team. So if you can't come into camp, come into a season in the prime condition and to help out your team, coach is going to be able to find somebody who wins.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to ask you about A.J. McCarron. You had an article about him as well. I had a chance to watch him a lot. I'm an SEC girl, watch a lot of SEC football. What is your opinion of A.J. McCarron? Can he be – I think he's a good backup. Can he be a starter in the league?
I was very high on A.J. McCarron when he was coming out of Alabama. I watched a lot of A.J. McCarron, looking at his tape, both his junior year and his senior year. And one of the things that kind of stood out to me was his competitive fire. And I – thinking back to the Alabama spring game, and he threw an interception in that game and just was livid with himself and came back on the next drive of that spring game and, led a scoring drive. And it was clear that he didn't want to lose any reps. He wanted to, even though he's, coming back, returning starter, national championship aspirations, he was a guy that had competitive fire. And if you think about, even though they lost that game to Auburn on that, kick field goal return for a touchdown, the Chris Davis run, Alabama and Nick Saban pretty much put that game in A.J. McCarron's hands. I mean, he led a number of touchdown drives, threw the ball very well in that game. So I was really high on him. I was excited to see him get an opportunity with Cincinnati because I think that's a good spot for him to land, to learn. He learned under Hugh Jackson this year, who did a great job. Dalton as well. I think A.J. McCarron is definitely a solid NFL backup who, if given a chance, could be a very capable NFL starting quarterback. And, he's somebody that I believe in, somebody that I thought really high of when I was looking at him. And I think in the right opportunity, he could definitely grow into a good NFL quarterback.
I think that's an excellent way to put it, and I would completely agree with that assessment. Hugh Jackson to the Cleveland Browns. It was an odd decision to me. I certainly love Hugh Jackson. I hope that he does well. It looks like he's going to move on from Johnny Manziel. We'll see what they do with their quarterback situation. But there are some very intriguing quarterbacks coming out this year. Let's go ahead and talk about Senior Bowl. Let's talk about quarterbacks. Give us a rundown on some of the invites that you're most excited about.
I mean, this is, I've talked to a lot of people about this, anybody that will listen, that I love this quarterback class. It's not like years past you've got a surefire number one or a couple of guys at the top that are going to be day one starters. But I think this is a very deep class.
I do too.
Yeah, there are guys near the end of this draft like, a Kevin Hogan or a Dak Prescott, two guys will be at the Senior Bowl, or Brandon Doty, who's a guy from Western Kentucky who's down at the Shrine game this week. Even some of the other guys there like Vernon Adams from Oregon, that they'll be on NFL rosters next year and could contribute to a team either as long-term backups or spot starters. So I think there's going to be a lot of guys in this class that will be on rosters 3 years from now, 5 years from now.
Well, let's face it, it's definitely a quarterback-thirsty league.
It is, and, we're starting to see this play out already. I mean, Jeff Risdon, who's down at the Shrine game right now, he almost broke Twitter, I think, Monday night or Sunday night when he was talking to somebody with the league and said that Carson Wentz, the guy from North Dakota State, who I love, might not even get to Dallas with the fourth pick.
Wow.
And, I love Carson Wentz. I started writing about him in North Dakota State back in December of 2014. I mean, I've been watching this guy for a long time. I'm very high on him. But top 3, top 4 picks, that's really rich.
Yeah.
But it just goes to your point, which is a great one, that it's a quarterback-starved league, and so many teams have issues at the quarterback position. I mean, even if you look at the 4 teams playing this weekend, look at Denver. I mean, they've got some issues there at quarterback. Yep. I mean, Arizona, Carson Palmer had a great season, but he's not going to be there. How much longer? How much more time
Exactly.
does he have? They could draft a replacement. Tom Brady, yeah, they've got Garoppolo. Brady says he wants to play until he's 50, but, I wouldn't be surprised to see New England's done it before where they draft a quarterback. So quarterbacks get drafted a lot earlier than people expect. So we're going to see a lot of these guys get drafted.
I'm a big fan of Jimmy Garoppolo, but we've certainly seen the Patriots draft quarterback upon quarterback and then trade. And we saw that with Ryan Mallett.
Exactly.
So I agree. It's certainly not out of the question. As you know, I live in Tennessee, and I used to cover the Titans exclusively. And, they are the holder of the number 1 overall selection. They have their quarterback of the future in Marcus Mariota. They will probably not use that pick to select a quarterback, although it wouldn't surprise me if they didn't select a developmental guy later on. But from our perspective, people who follow the Titans and pay attention to them, the more buzz around this quarterback class, the better, because we would love for Jerry Jones to trade up, and if he's interested in a guy like Wentz or whoever.
Right, and John Robinson already came out and said, "Look, that number 1 pick, it's for sale."
Yeah.
So I mean, there are a number of teams at or near the top of the draft that can take a quarterback. I mean, you mentioned obviously Hugh Jackson in Cleveland. They're probably moving on from Johnny Manziel. Josh McCown's probably not the answer there. They could be in the market for a quarterback. San Diego sitting there at 3. They've got. They've got Phillip Rivers, but again, another guy that you might take advantage of the high draft slot to get a quarterback and get that extra 5th year, draft a guy in the 1st round. And then Jerry Jones at number 4, again, they have Rome, they can move on. 49ers sitting there at 7. So there's a number of teams that could draft a quarterback in the 1st round.
The Saints, too. The Saints, they've got to get somebody behind Drew Brees. And there are a lot of teams that have their guy, but their guy is getting older. And I'm here to tell you, it would not surprise me if the Packers at some point, and I don't know if it's this year or next, but they're going to have to at some point pull an Aaron Rodgers behind a Brett Favre and address theirs.
Yeah, and, quarterback, it's one of those positions you'd rather be a year early than a year late.
Yeah.
Because if you mistime it, if you're a year late on it, then you're trying to get some, undrafted guy or some long-term backup to run your team for a year or two before you get the quarterback of the future. So, there are teams near the top of this draft that could probably get their next guy, let him sit for a year, draft him in the 1st round, lock up that 5th year on that contract, and develop him in their system.
Yeah, absolutely. If you had to pick, who would be your top 5, and then we'll talk about a couple of sleeper picks.
My top 5 QBs right now?
Yes.
I mean, the top 2, I'm not done. I'm getting, see Wentz next week down in Mobile. But, I mean, Jared Goff and Carson Wentz, I think right now stand out to me. Wentz does a lot sort of under center. He's more of a pro-style, pro-ready type quarterback, whereas Goff runs that bear raid system where he's in the shotgun all the time, spreads the ball out a lot, sort of a spread system where he's, always throwing the football. But they're both quarterbacks I think that could have success in the right fit, in the right scheme at the NFL level. Another guy I'm excited about is Paxton Lynch, the kid from Memphis. He was a wing-key quarterback in high school, so he's still really learning the position. He's raw, but he's got a lot of athletic traits that NFL scouts will like. Got a nice arm, places the ball very well on throws, but he's still sort of coming into the position. Connor Cook's that guy that's sort of like that 4th slot, I think. He's a guy I really wish would have. He was invited to the Senior Bowl, but he's not going down. I know he had the shoulder injury that he was struggling with near the end of that season. I would have liked to have seen him down there, even if it's just to, meet with teams. And, there are some rumors about his sort of mental makeup, and he wasn't voted a team captain. And we saw a little bit of, I don't want to say arrogance when you're accepting a trophy, but how that Big Ten trophy ceremony went down. Doesn't seem like a guy that maybe his teammates don't like him, and these are a lot of questions that we don't know the answers to. But if we're talking about them, surely NFL teams are talking about them. So, those are sort of the top 4. That 5th guy, Dak Prescott is a name I'd put in there. Cardale Jones, who I haven't done a lot of film work on yet, he's a name that I'm really looking forward to spending some time on. People have talked about him a lot.
I hate to interrupt you, but what do you think people, scouts primarily, not just NFL scouts, but scouts in general, will make of him, given that he just hasn't started that many games?
Yeah, I mean, it's an issue. I mean, there are all these sorts of, like, rules of thumb that you hear about, like, you know, the Parcells rule where you have to have started at least 23 games, or, you know, there's the 26, 27, 60 rule where you have to have a 26 or a 27 on Wonderlic, win 26 games and complete 60% of your passes. There are all these sort of formulas that teams sometimes like to use, but, you know, the issue with Jones is that, you know, he had the great run in the semifinals and the Big Ten championship game 2 years ago, but then that offense struggled at times with him. Physically, just looking purely at his traits, he's a guy that NFL teams would love. He's got a big arm, he's very athletic, can throw with anticipation at times. Accuracy dips a little bit, but it's pretty consistent. But with all that talent at Ohio State and Columbus and all the tools around him and the weapons at his disposal, the offense struggled a bit. So, you know, teams are going to have to look at this film and see if there's a guy that they'd like and that they could bring in that could work in their system. Yeah. And for some teams, that answer might be definitely. And for others, it might not be. And that's when you get down to really what's going to make or break it for all of these guys is the landing spot and, you know, the scheme that they're drafted in. For example, if a team that's going to be throwing the ball 50 times a game drafts Kevin Hogan, it might not fit well.
Yeah.
But in the right spot, that's another guy that could have a long career in the NFL.
I know you had another guy that you wanted to mention, but while we're talking about it, I was going to ask this when we were talking about A.J. McCarron, and I forgot. What emphasis do scouts put on guys who turn down invitations to the Senior Bowl?
I mean, I think NFL teams probably put a lot more emphasis on it than sort of the guys that do this in the media format like me. Like, I would have liked to have seen it, but I'm certainly not going to dock them a grade or anything like that. I think there's sort of an old school element among NFL scouting circles where they want to see a guy go down there and compete. You know, they want to see a guy have a little bit of competitive fire to go down there and, you know, try to fight for his job. I mean, that's sort of the old school hard-nosed look at football. Right. I think we're seeing more of an emphasis on the media side and in some, you know, NFL scouting circles of just looking at a guy's traits and ignoring all the noise and all the chatter about, he did this or he didn't do that or his teammates don't like him. Just look at the guy's tape because, as Ron Jaworski said, the film doesn't lie. The eye in the sky doesn't lie. And if he does things on film against Ohio State or against Stanford in the Rose Bowl or against Iowa in the Big Ten championship game that you can live with and that you like, then ignore the other stuff and bang the table for him when it's your selection.
Yeah. Was there another quarterback that you wanted to mention?
I mean, there's some more guys down there in Mobile that I'm excited to see. Jacoby Brissett, who, you know, I kind of like, but, you know, there's definitely some issues there. He's a guy that plays with play strength. He can make progression reads at times, but you'd like to see him make quicker decisions, get the ball out faster. I'm excited to see Jake Coker in person.
I was just getting ready to ask him.
Yeah.
Do you think it seems to me, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I thought that his national championship game really improved his stock.
Oh, definitely. I mean, I was talking to people when he made that deep throw to Ridley on that vertical route where he had guys at his feet, couldn't step into the throw, and he released it well before Ridley even made his break. I said to somebody, he just got drafted. I mean, because that's probably a play that you will see over and over and over again on NFL Network or ESPN during draft night on day 2, because that was an NFL-type throw.
Yeah.
I think there are some things that he does that scouts will love. I think that he reads some schemes, some concepts. Like, I went through and watched that Wisconsin game again, and there were some NFL styles, like the Mets concept, that he ran extremely well, showed patience, worked through his progressions. His accuracy does dip at times. That's an issue. It's one of those things you can't really scheme around.
Right.
But I'm excited to see him down there. I think that's a guy that, if he, you know, he had a good national championship game, made that great throw, led his team to a victory in a national championship. If he has a good week down in Mobile, that's a guy that I wouldn't be surprised to hear his name called on Friday.
Yeah. I should have asked you this when we started talking about it. For those who might not be familiar, explain what the Senior Bowl is and a little bit about the process.
Oh, sure. It's basically what it is. It's run by Phil Savage, who does a great job with it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a week of practices down in Mobile, Alabama. And there's two teams that get set up, the North and the South, and one will be coached by the Cowboys. They're coaching the North squad this year, and the other's coached by the Jacksonville Jaguars, coaching the South squad. And what it really does is it gives NFL teams, all 32 teams will be down there in attendance, a chance to see these guys, up close and personal, put them through a week of practice, which is really the most important part. I mean, people should know that, Saturday morning, most people are leaving town.
Yeah,
because the game doesn't really matter. It's that week of practice, putting these guys through drills. And like just talking about the quarterback position, a lot of these guys, like Jared Goff, Paxton Lynch, you're putting them under center for the first time in a long time and seeing them take a snap from center. Then, you're putting them through meetings and whiteboard and going down and breaking down film and plays with these guys afterwards. And it's a chance for these teams to see, okay, they come into the Senior Bowl week, they've got film work done on these guys, they've had scouts see these guys in person. Now, does the hands-on approach, does that verify what they had going in? Does that verify what they thought of these players? Or does it give them some concerns? And it's a great week, and Phil Savage does a great job with it. He really opens it up to guys like me and you and people that want to go down there and see this in person and see this take shape and see kind of how the sausage is made. So
are you going to be there this year?
I'm going to be. This is actually my first time, to be honest. I'll be down there. I get in Wednesday morning. Hopefully, I live in D.C. and we've got apparently the storm of the century coming. So who knows? But I will be down there. I'm really excited to see it and see a lot of people. And are you going to be down there this week?
Well, I had planned to go, and I'm not completely ruling it out. It would be my first time too. I mean, we've talked about this. I keep promising every year. I say I'm going to do it. I'm actually, though, I just found out this morning that I'm going to be credentialed for the NFC Championship game. So it may be a little hard for me to turn around and head back out again. But if I can do it, I'm going to do it. I'm very excited to do it. It is definitely a bucket list thing. Yeah. Believe me.
Yeah. Well, that should be great covering the NFC Championship game, though.
Yeah, I'm so excited. I'm very excited about it. And that's a great way to segue into. I want to ask you, we talked a little bit about Panthers, Cardinals, and I want to ask you a few more questions about that. But let's talk about Patriots, Broncos a little bit. Peyton Manning is definitely nearing the end of his career. He's had he's a first ballot Hall of Famer, no question, hands down. That's the end of the discussion, in my opinion. Do you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I've watched Peyton and Tom Brady and their teams go after it for years now. I mean, full disclosure, I am a Patriots fan.
Okay.
You can probably hear the Boston accent. I mean, I grew up in Boston. So I've been, and Peyton's one of these guys that I love watching him play until he's lining up against the Patriots.
Yeah.
Because he's just incredible at what he does. And, obviously, he's near the end of the career. This might be the final ride for him. And he's had what I think anybody would agree is a rough season. I mean, he hasn't put up the numbers that you would expect, but he's still Peyton Manning. He's still number 18, and as a Patriots fan, I will be very nervous when this game kicks off because, he's got one more. I'm sure he's got one more great playoff game in him, and it could come this Sunday.
I think so. Yeah, I agree. I had a chance to talk about this game last night with another Patriots person, and I actually, I went to school at Tennessee. I'm a Tennessee alum, and so I'm obviously, a little partial to Peyton.
Right.
But I respect Bill Belichick greatly, and you can't help but respect Tom Brady. And one of my favorite. Listen, you'll appreciate this, Mark. I used to do a lot of scouting draft work, and I was so big on Jamie Collins coming out.
Yeah.
I love the guy, and he was one of the players that he was kind of an unknown, and of course he had a fantastic combine, which always helped.
Right.
But I was like, with the Titans, it would be a risk, sure, but would they take him in the first round? Because I think they were, when he came out, they had like maybe a 17, 18, and I don't remember where they were. I was afraid that he wouldn't last into the second round.
Right.
And as it turns out, the Patriots snagged him in the second round, and he's just been a fantastic player.
Yeah, he's an impact defender and an incredible athlete and a guy that, is sort of that Bill Belichick mold. I mean, you see him on the field goal block team blocking kicks. I mean, he'll do anything for this team. That, that's how teams get built. You find guys that are willing to play special teams and do other things. But yeah, this Denver New England game, it should be a ton of fun to watch. Really looking forward to it. And it'll be interesting to see. Denver's a tough place to play. New England had the regular season game there this year, and they had a lead but couldn't finish the game. And now, there's injuries on both sides, so we'll see how it pans out. It might come down really to Chris Harris. He's got that injured shoulder.
Yeah.
If he can't go or if he's limited and you see Bradley Roby on Julian Edelman more, that might be the matchup to watch.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I said last night, it's been an interesting playoffs in a lot of ways. The wild card rounds featured all of the visiting teams winning. The divisional rounds, all of the home teams won. I am actually picking the visiting teams again, and I think that as much as I love the Broncos and I love Peyton Manning, I'm not a big fan of Gary Kubiak's offense. I'm just not. I wasn't when he was with the Texans, and I'm even less happy about it now. I think that if all things being equal, if Tom Brady has the game that he expects, maybe you're right. Maybe Peyton Manning does have that superhuman ability to, have that kind of playoff game that he would need to have really to win this game. The wild card thing for me, and I said this, I think if Denver's defense is able to get a defensive score, then they can win it. But barring that, I just think that the Patriots have the better offense. We'll see. I think the Patriots offense versus the Denver's defense is definitely the matchup there. I think you have to watch. What about Panthers and Cardinals? We talked a little bit about it. Carson Palmer having a fantastic season. What is your look at that?
I mean, just from a purely emotional standpoint, I couldn't be happier that these two teams are meeting. And, you've got, from a quarterback's perspective, Cam Newton, whom I love watching. He's one of my favorite players to watch.
Yeah.
Carson Palmer was having sort of a great twilight to his career. I would be thrilled if either of those guys wins the Super Bowl. I think it would be great.
Yeah.
And, only partially because of the people that Cam Newton seems to irritate.
Yeah.
I kind of like that.
I do too.
Yeah. And plus he does so much in that community that people just don't even see or don't even want to see. I mean, I just think he's been a great addition to that community. I think he does wonders in that area. From a purely schematic standpoint, we touched on it a bit. That Arizona defense and how they try to contain Cam Newton, I think that's probably going to tell the story.
Yeah.
But you can't ignore the fact that Luke Kuechly and the rest of that Panthers defense, I mean, they're also a great unit. And, Josh Norman against Larry Fitzgerald, that's going to be fun to watch. I mean, there's so many storylines in both of these games.
Oh, I know.
It's just going to be a great day of football, isn't it?
Yeah. I'm rooting for storylines and players and things of that nature. And for me, of course, the loss of Charles Tillman for the Panthers is huge.
Right.
It would have been awesome to see him, finally make a Super Bowl. But on the other side, I'm really kind of rooting for Carson Palmer and Larry Fitzgerald to make a Super Bowl. And I think, and I said this last night, I think one of the more intriguing things for me, and we'll finish up after this, one of the more intriguing things for me is to see how Bruce Arians works the Panthers secondary, because Josh Norman is a fantastic player, no doubt. Cortland Finnegan has been a great pickup. But I think the Cardinals just have so many playmakers. It's going to be very difficult for them to deal with all of them. If Carson Palmer has the kind of football game that we know that he can, I think that they'll win. We'll see how that turns out. It's such a pleasure, Mark. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, tell everybody again where they can find you, find your work on social media and on the internet.
Sure. The website's insidethepylon.com. We've got 3 to 4 articles going up most days, including the glossary stuff which I mentioned. You can find me on Twitter. I'm at Mark M-A-R-K Schofield SCHOFIELD. I'm pretty much always on there. And while I'm here, I might as well mention I do have a book coming out next week.
Oh, cool.
Which people can check out. It's called 17 Drives. Basically, what I did is I looked at one drive from each week of the college football season to kind of take you through from that week 1 matchup all the way through the national championship game. So I put it together, broke down each play from that one drive to kind of tell the story about that game and the entire season. So we'll have that coming out probably next week. So you can check that out too.
Well, definitely send me a link, and we'll be tweeting out all of this stuff.
Awesome. I will. Thank you so much for having me. This has been awesome.
Thanks for joining me.
Yeah, of course. And we'll have you on ours very, very soon.
I appreciate that. All right. Have a great day.
You too.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.